is going to be. I don't know if this happens in economics or in your perspective about history, but if allow me to give you an example. It's from the sculpture from Louise Bourgeois. She has an interesting exercise. It's something that we can do it mentally. It's very simple. So imagine that you have a spiral. Okay? It's two spirals actually. They are very similar. They, their shape is exactly the same. But one spiral, it's done from beginning in the center and being developed towards the outside. The other spiral, and remember, the shape is exactly the same, but the other spiral, you begin from the outside and you are going to the center. So the shape is the same, the effect is the same, but the cause is actually very different. In one, we need to control everything when we go from the outside to the inside. It's usually people who like to control those spirals like that. People who are open to randomness and to chance usually like to begin in the center and go outside because they don't know where it's going to end. But the effect is the same. I don't know how these changes in perception, how sometimes our tendency to evaluate, to understand causes from the effects, it's actually a mistake and can lead us to wrong decisions in history, in economics, also in art history as well. Uh,
Yeah. I think you're right, and sometimes you don't never know what are the causes that produce those effects. But I think that in economics, sometimes you understand the causes associated with the effects. For instance, in 2008, uh, the cause for the crisis that we have was produced somewhere in the world by the subprime. This was actually one of the causes. The one that we're facing now, you know, that is caused by pandemic. So it's a different one. The cause is different, but we also have some effects that you can see in society, in economy. Um, so that's it. I would say that sometimes in economics you explore the causes, and I would say that in history sometimes you also know the causes that produces some of the effects. Uh, but of course, some of them are, I would say, mimetized. You never know what happened because they are hidden somewhere in history. Um, another issue that I would like also to introduce here is the issue of emergence. I have also a slide here. I think it's the last one, maybe, or maybe the one before. So emergence is like the opposite of going top down. So the opposite of that is going bottom up. So the idea of emergence, yeah, it's the one after this. Uh, so it's, I would call it macro regularities that emerge or grow from the micro specifications of the individuals. So in this sense, uh, if you analyze the aggregate behavior, sometimes the aggregate behavior is not the sum of the parts, because if you, as a whole, you behave differently from your partner, from your friend, from your neighbor, and altogether we have an aggregate behavior, and this is the phenomenon of emergence. So it's the kind of a sum of the all behaviors, and in economics this is something that we study also. Um, this has been introduced by, well, this is not been introduced by Herbert Salmon, but Herbert Salmon is a Nobel laureate that introduced the concept of bounded rationality, in the way that people have some bounded rationality when taking decisions. So my question is, do we have also this in arts? So do we have also this kind of aggregate phenomenon, and at the end everybody's doing the same, or is there any trend?
well, let me. I think one of the first things that an art student learns is that the whole is more than the sum of its parts. Um, but we can look at this. I think in art we have to look at this from two different perspectives. A close perspective on what's happening in the individual, in the actual work of art, and also from a distant perspective when we look at the field of art. So it's well, the field of art is about artists, it's about gallerists, museum staff, it's about curators, every uh, uh, every element that's working within the field to well to actually create their own spot, to actually be visible in that field. So there are of course repetition and there are of course mimetizing behaviors that create that sense of movement or the sense of movement or the sense of style or the sense of zeitgeist, the spirit of time. So it's like a series of elements that are participating in the artistic field are shaping also a kind of regularity. In contemporary art, the diversity and of speeches, the diversity of institutions that are participating it's much more difficult to understand that common ground. But like also like complex systems, they are dynamic and they are responsive. They cannot be predicted often, but we can look at also, and I think yes, we have to understand what's happening in the art system. The interactions between the constituents of the field are such that we cannot fully understand the heartbeat, the behaviors in the art system by simply analyzing its components, an individual part. We have to look at it as forces within the field, how they are shaping each other. I don't know. It's like art is actually a metaphor for for society, for economics, also for history. I think we still have some minutes. I don't know if I can raise another 5 minutes. Okay, it's another question because I think what we share, well, arts, economics, alternative history, it's because we actually are aware of the distortions by which we came in contact with well, with history itself, with art history or with economical behavior. I don't know if I'm reading this right because, well, this opacity that we have mentioned prior when you spoke about the black swans of Nassim Taleb. And I would like to bring this to our discussion. It's what Taleb speaks about, the triplet of opacity. So what is this? It's first of all the fact that our minds seems to suffer from these distortion points. One of them is the illusion of understanding. So it's how we think we know what is going on in the world. So we usually have this perception that because we exist in our actual time, we can understand it. We can understand what's happening around us. In a world that is more complex and more random than we sometimes realize, because we are searching for patterns, and sometimes reality in art, in economics, in life, it doesn't follow a pattern. He also spoke about the retrospective distortion, and this is something that I found, and that I think it's a very interesting notion. How we can access matters only after the fact, as in a rear mirror. So it's like history seems clear and more organized in history books than in empirical reality. So in art this happens. So we usually look at art as a sequence of movements of styles, and this is very organized in art history books, in critical books. We need these concepts, but actually we are looking at them in the rear mirror. And the third distortion is the over-evaluation of factual information. and the handicap often of authoritative or learned people, particularly when they create categories, when they platonify, when we actually say, well, this happens because, and we have a concept or a category that allows us to understand what's going on. This type of distortions, I think, by which we get in touch with history are also the type of distortions that happen when we get in touch with art as well. We tend to understand what's the, to have the illusion that we understand what's happening around us. When actually, as I said, the art world and the world itself, it's more complex and random than we realize. It's very difficult to follow patterns. We have this retrospective distortion. We think we can access matters after the fact, and we have the illusion that the future will be like that. And also the categories. We have to think with categories. They are part of our mental system or our conceptual way of understanding the world. And sometimes categories allow us to understand what's happening, but they leave many of the unpredictable behaviors aside. I don't know how do you feel about this in economics?
I completely agree with you. This is not only related to economics, but I would say in history in general. So sometimes you just hide some of the facts, you just forget them. See what happened in America now with Trump. Sometimes it's we don't know what. Some people just don't know what happened. I mean, the Americans, when Trump was there, some facts have been completely omitted because the president didn't want them to be known. And as he was the president, so he thought that he had the right to hide a part of history. So I completely agree with you.
Authority plays a strange role in all
That's
of
right.
this.
So I think we need to stop now.
Hi.
Unfortunately.
Well, you will not stop completely because there are a few questions that have arrived for you to answer both. But the part of the shared dialogue between both of you has to stop. So there seems to be an interesting question regarding the aspects you've talked about the organization of history in art and in history per se, that organization in art books and history books can change the perception you have of history itself. So the question is, if memory is creative in the way it organizes image and the way we perceive ourselves and history has to do with memory, can it be that some what-ifs that we believe to be departing points for alternative history are in fact facts?
Yes, yes, it's a question and an answer at the same time, because mainly our initial stories were about that. Okay, so these what if possibilities. What if we actually, well, we don't have to draw the hill. So what if we put an elephant there? So this decision, it's about the subjunctive mode. What if becomes real? And also in the second story that opens our discussion is what if we change, we excise land? So what if we change the borders? It's like if it were a membrane, that's something that can be forced or to contract. It can change, it can move. It's a moving line. So actually, history and art history is made a lot of what if. So even in Western history, so sometimes we have to think. Well, history is not, of course, an invention of the West, but the way we look at it, it's a very Western concept. We actually look at history as a kind of a timeline, and we have to agree that, well, sometimes that's not the only way to read time and to understand time. Alternative history or alternative art history is now being is now emerging as a way also of questioning some of the more questioning some of the pillars of Western thinking. So you have black art history, you have African history, you have museums that are now more aware
But
of.
aren't those facts that already existed and simply were missing from the official history accounts?
Yes, but often fiction,
Mhm.
the what if, can be a way of looking at what is invisible, of raising the, well, they are not necessarily patterns, they were there. But fiction allow us often, fiction in the sense that what happens after the point of divergence, after the point where expectations were broke, and we raise these questions, well, what if? Because the question itself, I think in art as in history, usually introduces uncertainty, introduces doubt, introduces expectation, introduces desire. What if? So
Turns the world upside down.
turns the world upside down, and this changes perception. It's that's why I begin by speaking about rhetorics. It's about that. It's a word that can change the perception that we have of reality.
I have here another question of Professor Paulo spoke of black swans, and Professor Pedro spoke of paleidolia. It's like this?
Mhm.
Okay. So what if, from the point of the generator of history, um, these are the elements that assure that the what if follows the course of factual history and not the one of hypothetical? And how can you explore there that type of events in art and economics from a researcher point of view?
Well, can I start? So, as a researcher, this is not very common to use this kind of. For instance, if you just study the social cycles, the theory of cycles the theory of social cycles in economy, for instance, so to analyze this theory with the lens of economy, I would say that this is not easy. As I said, people in mainstream are not able to understand why those cycles happen. But when I introduced this concept of pareidolia, pareidolia, the idea is that sometimes there are some kind of triggers, some kind of impulse that just provoke them. In my perspective, this can be people like, I don't know, for instance, Elon Musk. You know, Elon Musk, if he didn't exist, maybe we shouldn't have this kind of things that is completely crazy when he started compulsively to create an electric car, and now we have electric cars. So I can see this as a kind of a trigger that changed in the center, in the certain sense, the world, or is changing the world. So this may be an example of pareidolia, kind of a different person that changes the world.
Is it possible regarding those waves, contradictive waves, what's the name?
Mhm.
That if you apply the what ifs of alternative history to those types of economic events, you can find the triggers that you mentioned and the black swans and adjust those waves in a way that the most part of the wave is for the improvement and success and the least part for depression and recession?
Yes, that's
For
right.
both.
Okay.
The question is for both.
If you take a look at the Kondratiev curves
Yes.
that I shown
So
before,
instead of being symmetrical,
Okay.
which
Mhm.
was what they were, if you, through analysis of what ifs and the alternative history, you can change to be an asymmetrical wave where most of the time is the part of the cycle that we like and
try to
diminish the part
strengthen
of the
the
time that we
yeah.
don't like,
Well, I really don't
depression
know.
and recession.
This is maybe very hard to if you just imagine everything like a what if scenario. Maybe the answer could be yes. We can imagine everything that, and maybe try to say that everything should be possible. But I really don't know if this is possible. I imagine that it could be possible. It can change the course of history. But in my last slide, I was trying to show that because in my field of research in agent-based modeling, what we do is that, and I said that, and at a certain time, you just program the individuals, the agents, to behave with a certain behavior, and then you just observe the aggregate behavior. So sometimes, even if you produce different rules for each of the agents, the aggregate behavior does not change. Sometimes that's what happens. So you have the same exact behavior. So I don't know. I imagine that this is possible. What kind of rules you could introduce to the agents in order to produce different curves?
How about the arts? What do they have to say about this?
Well, I don't know. Probably I would be. I have a skeptical position about our capacity to preview or to predict what is going to happen based on individual components. Okay, so I don't know if I can answer to that question and with a twofold perspective regarding the way art works. So we probably have to understand that an artwork usually exists in a relationship with the world. So in a different, I don't know if the English word would be correct, in different adjustments between itself and the world. So you have artwork that's trying to match the world. They describe the world. And you have an artwork that's trying to change the world. Okay, so they are performative in that sense. They don't describe. They are like performative utterances. They create the world by naming it, by intervening in it. So you probably have to understand that we can change the world by creating the possibility of that change. So an artwork, well, some of them actually exists in that subjunctive mode. So what if reality were like this? What if I could do that? What if the cities could be organized in a different way? So we can create these alternative possibilities. They exist in our mind or in our imagination. We can look at them through an object or through a simulation. But the fact that we can visualize them, the fact that we can think about them, it's the first step to change the world. So I think often this is a common ground between alternative history and the artwork. It allows us to imagine that reality without actually having to change reality. And without having, well, also without having to arrive at a definitive solution. I don't know if I'm being clear about this.
So let me just add that this is maybe one of the advantages of arts compared with economics, because we have to face reality to understand it and to see that we are there. And with arts, you can just imagine. And
yes.
Well, there are people who would argue that sometimes economics does not show reality, but rather a specific point of view.
was maybe also that aspect that Paulo mentioned before, this distortion of retrospective distortion. Maybe some economists also have this kind of, we are humans after all, so this, of course, this happens. But
I believe we are at the limit of our time, and I would like to thank you once again in the name of the organization. I thoroughly enjoyed your conversation, and I believe that everyone that heard and watched also did. And I like the reaction to the questions that were made. And I hope this is the beginning and not the end of this type of conversation between arts and economics. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you.